Hi there! Let's do something a little different today. A while ago I talked about a bookshelf that I wanted to build and then how I never ever did it. Well, I got time today, so I'm going to do it now. I'll show you the design, probably edit that in. It's very simple. It's going between two bookshelves, so it's not intended to be freestanding. There's no fancy joinery because I don't have time for that right now. I'm just going to bolt it straight to the side of two Ikea bookshelves. And I really don't care if I put a bunch of bolt holes through an Ikea bookshelf because Ikea. I'm building most of it out of this is pine 1x4, so it's a 3/4 by 3.5 inches, surfaced all four sides, so it comes from the store nice and smooth on all four sides. You don't have to do any of that. You might want to sand it. I'm probably not going to use any power tools for this, so I might use my power sander because hand sanding sucks. But really, if you're taking the laziest approach, you don't really have to sand this. It's pretty smooth. But if you want it to look nice, I'm putting it next to Ikea bookshelves, so I might not even bother because the Ikea ones certainly don't look nice. They are solid wood, but they're really cheap solid wood, which I guess I didn't have to say because that information was hidden in the word Ikea. This is an 8-foot board. I need 2 of them per side of the bookshelf. So I'm going to cut this to 6.5 feet. Now tape measures, the end of the tape measure is a little loose, and there's a reason for that. The idea is if you pull on it and take up the slack this way, the markings will all be correct. And then if you push it against the wall, the slack that takes up will make all the markings correct. See what I mean? This thing, it has slide in it. 6.5. Get a nice fine line. Here's a tip. Right away, I've given away my secrets. See the pencil? Do this on some sandpaper. Now it's super sharp. You can get a really fine point without a mechanical pencil that just breaks all the time. Now to saw, I'm going to use this gap between the workbenches. This is just to keep the metal filings and crap from getting on my wood. I don't want it messing up my wood tools. Second tool of the day, this saw, missing teeth. Available at some hardware store. It's a very cheap one, but it does work. I don't have like power saws, so I'm going to do this all with cheap hand tools. Well, not all of them are cheap, but they're all hand tools. Of course, if you have power tools, this will all go way faster and your cuts will be a lot better. But I need the workout with my manly muscles. And the cut doesn't have to be like flawless, because most of this is going to get planed away. And you'll see what I mean later. Next, the offcut, 15.5 inches. 15.5, 9, saw. There, you get some reasonably good cuts even with a home cheapo saw with missing teeth. And here's where the potential woodworking sacrilege comes in. These cheap screws. These screws are going to be hidden, and they have a good many uses. One of which is to quickly assemble cheap furniture. One thing you can do also, you can glue the parts and then screw them together, and then you don't have to bother with clamps. There is an alternative, which I'll tell you about later. So here's a good trick for you. If you're going to be drilling holes, if you're trying to line these things up, spring clamps, and there are millions of uses. Spring clamp the square tight onto the workpiece. There. Now you don't need an extra couple of arms. I mean, most of these projects require far more arms than the normal human body. Just pre-drilling some holes. They don't have to go all the way through. Just a little bit into the second one there. Another trick you might not like, but I'm going to do it anyway. Spit on it. There. Nice healthy dose of saliva. I'm told it helps lubricate the screw as it goes in, and also the moisture swells the wood around it, tightening it around the screw. And make sure your screws are shorter than the distance, so it's not sticking out the back. Success! One more just to firm it down. Another one just to firm it down. Drill! Boom. These are going to be hidden. These are going to be inside, and a board or like a shelf will be on top. So don't worry about the hideousness of these screws. And a couple more if you're a completionist. You don't really have to pre-drill into pine. Now, wide angle shot, because here's where it gets tricky. We have to mark the angle on all of these pieces. We're going to do something similar to this. You want this corner to line up with this edge of the board. Then you're going to cut that off. Cut the end of this off flush, plane it later. You want way up at the top here, this edge to meet this upper corner of this board. Draw a line, cut this off of this board, if that makes sense. Now spring clamps to the rescue. Line it up, clampy clamp clamp. Actually no, gonna clamp, yeah. Clamp here, yeah. Okay, I know what I'm doing. Adjust here roughly. Clampy clamp clamp. Double check this. Yeah, that's about right. Pencil time. Draw a line, mark the waist. My clamp. It's getting in the way of marking this. I'm marking on the underside of this board. That's not as super vital. Now the top of the backboard, because this front angle board is going to be full thickness all the way up. Don't know why, I just chose to do it that way. Mark what we're cutting off and decide what to do first. I can't make them rock, paper, scissors each other to see who dies first, so I'm going to pick this one. Now for a while, I wanted to do hand tool woodworking, traditional hand tool woodworking. I reasoned that power tools were expensive. Stupid car jack in the way, jerk. Power tools are expensive, they take up a lot of space, make a lot of noise. For a long time I was living in an apartment, so I couldn't do this. Spring cleaner can't do this, what am I doing? Then I realized I am predisposed to hate sanding by hand. Fortunately, there are some things like scrapers. I mean, you don't have to hand sand anything. My planers leave some really nice finishes, so you don't really have to hand sand. So I got a random orbit sander. Then I got carpal tunnel. Realized, power saws aren't that bad. They're also not that free, so I don't have one. And they take up room, and like even these benches take up room, but I can fold them up and everything else goes up on the wall. So I can't like take a big circular saw and just like hang it on the wall out of the way. Maybe one day I'll get a bigger garage. So until then, I will unintentionally make projects that you can make with simple tools. Notice it's simple, not cheap. There are a lot of really, really expensive hand tools. I don't have the super expensive ones, but I have some of the higher end Chinesium ones. Jump to the other side. I'm going to saw out the bulk of this. Why did I put a clamp there? Am I some kind of idiot? Don't answer that. I'm drifting. Running out of practice here. Yeah, there. About time, am I right? Alright, now we're clamped a little differently. This is sticking up from the workbench. The pencil line that I drew is visible here. I cut about 1/8 of an inch away from the pencil line because I want to shave down to the pencil line with my planer. Another thing I should mention, notice how it's clamped to the front of the workbenches? These boards are all flush. These sideways boards, these vertically ones, even this middle horizontal one, are all flush with the front of the top. And that's intentional, so I can clamp things straight to it. Got to clamp far away, clamp here, it's not going to move on me, and it's sticking up above the workbench. Planning is what that's called. Not so much planning, was not actually making a woodworking bench. This is too light, doesn't have any holes, work holding things or whatever. Anyway, this is a planer, a jack plane. Number 5 it says in there, made by Wood River, which is top quality Chinesium. Although I do have a Pinnacle blade, a nice blade, and it works dang well, even though it's embarrassingly rusty. I haven't used this thing in earnest in like 2 years, so I really need to fix it up a bit more. Oh, that bottom looks... that's going to give me nightmares how terrible that looks. But it works. That's the important thing. I'll make it pretty later. Or I won't. I don't know. So here's basically how I'm doing it. I have this tool to take a very, very thin shaving, and I'm going to run it the whole length. I'm going to try to keep it square. I'm not going to go angly on this. But if I run it the whole length of it, it'll just knock the tops down. It'll make a very smooth, straight, wonderful gluing surface. I'm going to mark the end of the pencil line, though, where the pencil line hits the edge. Make sure I don't drop that edge anymore. And then I'm going to make this into like a fine point. Here it's starting to hit more spots. It's knocking down the high points. The high points are becoming flat plateaus. We'll know it's good when it gives me a continuous long string and a loop-de-loop pattern. Of course, if you have a table saw like a sane woodworker, the sawing would have been much easier, would have been exact if you laid it out right, and you wouldn't have to do this. And you can buy table saws for what this plus the blade cost me. What am I thinking? On the other hand, you can do a lot more with this than you can with a table saw, believe me. Actually, you can do a lot with a table saw that you can't with a jack plane. Someone needs to make a pros and cons list. Now I noticed I'm shaving more off the left, so you can adjust. There are adjustments on depth and the left and rightiness. Throat depth you can't adjust on the fly, but I don't need to. When I started doing hand tool woodworking, I think in part because I thought, like, hand tools for more romantic or some crap. Then I realized power tools exist for a reason, and they are awesome. And in the end, if you're making something and whatever methods you're using you like, then great, do it. Nothing wrong with using power tools, nothing wrong with using hand tools. Both are fine. You can spend way too much money on either. The one benefit I will say about hand tools is you don't have a ton of dust, except for sanding. See what I mean by continuous chip? It was doing a roly-poly until it hit my finger and kind of bunched up. I just want to show this. This is the finish left by that planer. Smooth. Perfectly smooth. And you can even get it really nice and thin. The end was kind of cut funny. I didn't actually cut this end. This is like the factory cut end or whatever. So that looks a little janky, but that'll be cleaned up once we get it glued together. And I'm actually going to cut the top 1/4 inch off after glue up. So here's how the glue up works. I kind of set it up where I want it. I put this corner again on the edge of this, just like last time. I'm going to drill a screw into it. If you're a fine woodworker, this might be sacrilegious. But remember, this is pine. Cheapo pine. And I'm in a hurry. And it's going to be attached to Ikea bookshelves. No part of that combination should be fine woodworking. The one screw allows this to pivot a little bit, which will be nice, but holds it in place. Now we can clamp this together and notice a little gap. That's because it was clamped here and I was planing this way, and that actually bends this tip down as I'm planing. So it creates a high point in the middle, which gives us this little gap. It's touching here, it's touching here, but that's good. I planned on that, by which I mean I didn't compensate for it out of laziness, but it ended up great. Because now I can clamp here in the middle, tight, and it holds the whole joint really tight. And by clamping here tight, I mean I'm going to put a screw right there to hold it together. So pre-drilling this isn't a bad idea. And yes, sometimes I recommend clamping even if you're screwing things together, because it'll hold it, it'll keep it from sliding sideways and all that unfun stuff. Alright, and once you have the screw driven in, take it back out again. We're doing the hokey pokey of woodworking. Now apply glue. Glue, glue, glue. The fun stuff. This paper is there for a reason. Trust me, it'll make sense by the end. If it doesn't, pretend it makes sense. Here, lift it up. See, this is held in by that one screw. Isn't that a neat idea? Wish I thought of that when I made the other half. This is the second part. Wish I could take credit for that idea, but I think I saw it somewhere. Can't remember where I saw it, so I guess I can take credit? No, that wouldn't be right. None of these are actually my ideas. Most of it I saw somewhere at some point, filed it in the do this later file in my brain, right next to pretend it's your idea if you want to look more creative. How many original ideas are there in the world anyway? Someone had to come up with everything first, but everyone else copied or came up with the same idea later. But does that matter? I mean, it's still a good idea if more people come up with it. Convergent evolution or whatever they say. That's not for ideas, but it's just a word that makes me sound smart. Alright. And bloop. We can put it down. Now I'm going to put a clamp on the end. Now these aren't just to hold it together, but they're also to kind of keep the two parts from sliding like this next to each other. So you kind of snug them down, slide them till they're lined up, then clamp. Clamp hard. Return of this screw. This is actually a longer one. I found a longer one over on the pile. Pile isn't the right term. You don't have a pile of screws. What's the plural of? Is there like a flock of screws? What am I thinking of here? Probably just strip that. Oh well. Now continue making sure flush and clamp. Yes. Good, good. See the glue squeegeeing out of there? That means there's enough glue. There. After some fiddling, I got it nice and flush-ish. And let it dry. Some people say wipe whatever to get the extra glue off. Do not do that. Don't do that. I do something else. So this will take a while, so you can work on the rest of the bookshelf, but I'm going to go mow the lawn. You join me many hours later. After I mowed the lawn, I did some more stuff, and then I did some work on this, and then here I am. Basically what I did is I took some 1x2s in pine and cut it into 10-inch increments. 5 of them. You'll see what those are for later. Spoiler alert, they're for shelves. So on the side, this is going to be a shelf, but pretend this is the side that we glued up earlier that I just have to do some planing on. And you want to put a shelf on it like this. Then you're going to put flying wood. Then you're going to put like weight on this. What's going to hold it up? Well, these, modified a little bit to make them less hideous, glued like this. onto this so that the shelf sits on top of that. So that will be a nice sturdy support there. Also, the shelf will be attached to this and to this to kind of keep everything together. There's not going to be a lot of support to stop this thing from racking. Racking is like if it were to tilt like this, not tip over, I mean like tilt like this. So there will be a bookshelf on either side holding it up, and this will be bolted to that. So that'll be the racking support. Also, you might notice wood has knots in it and stampings. You can save some money by not buying the super expensive stuff. The super expensive pine, if there is such a thing, pine is like, someone needs a metaphor for how cheap pine is. It's really cheap, but if you want it without knots or any of that, it's really expensive. So I got like, there's different grades of pine. The cheapo pine is just all screwed up, so it's not worth the money. The medium grade pine is a little more expensive, which is what this is. A few knots here and there, but it's not all gashed up, not torn. The expensive pine, which has no knots, is super duper expensive. It's like triple price, so screw that. I don't know why I'm arguing this fact. No one's like going to criticize. This is a little over 6 feet. I needed half that. It's actually 6 feet and a quarter and a bit, so I'm going to go 3 feet and an eighth. Roughly cut it in half, and then we'll trim all of them to perfectly the same size later. I already did the other 2 of these. I have 3 6-foot boards, so I'll have 6 3-foot shelves because of math. And this will be the last major cut of this whole thing. But now we're going to engage in the art of the saw and blow. So I'm going to start over here, pull towards me, keep the angle fairly low, not like this or like this. I don't know why, but when I do it this way, I have trouble with the saw wandering. My saw skill is not great, but if I go from top down and pull, I can keep it pretty straight. So we're going to do that. And here's where the blowing comes in handy. I can't see what I'm doing now. Boom! That's not a bad saw joint. You don't saw a joint. Saw cut? Yeah, saw cut. That's not a bad saw cut, eh? Get some of this gunk out of there. And for a cheapo saw, and me using it, here's the cut that came on the other side. That's nasty. That's going to need a lot of work. I got 6 of these 3-footers, so that's all my shelves. I got all my supports. I got the side things done, and it's almost midnight, so I'm going to bed. Some projects take more than 1 day. This probably could have gone a lot faster, come to think of it, but I wanted to melt some stuff today, so I did that too. And because of that, this is going to take a while. It's probably going to take more than another day, a couple of days, mainly because the gluing part, and the finishing part, it really doesn't take a lot of time to finish. It's like a little bit of time, and then wait a day, and then a little bit of work, and then wait a day, and then at the end, you've done an hour's worth of work, and it took 7 days, and then it's finished.